This is a good example of natural bedrock outcrop that, once it spills out onto the flat, becomes a talus field or a scree field. It's sort of in between the two most typical kinds of woodrat sites we find. In this region, in my region, most of the woodrat sites are in talus. So if you ever hiked up 1,000 Steps, you've seen those big boulder fields. That's very typical talus. That's mostly what they occupy in this region. Natural bedrock outcrops like this are present, but they're far less numerous. Now, to the west of us, up on the Allegheny Front and up in north central, they tend to be primarily associated with bedrock outcrops. In the Allegheny Front, it's extensive, very long, linear, large outcrops. In north central, it's an outcrop this size, and then just a forest matrix with regular soil for another 100 or 200 meters, and then another bedrock outcrop. And then the same thing repeats, typically on the same parallel. So it's all very similar habitat, but not identical.
We set up that there before because the tree is right there in the good site.
This includes about 300 tons of rocks this size. We call that wall rock, so that forms the core. There is a contractor, we purchased that rock from a contractor who delivered it here, and then we partnered with a program called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Partners Program, which basically they build habitat. They do a lot of wetland work, wetland construction, a lot of in-stream habitat for fish populations, and then they basically donated their services to us for a week and a half here. So there's one guy operating a beefy excavator, placing these rocks very carefully into arrangements such that the voids between the rocks would be suitable for housing a woodrat den, one of those territorial females I was mentioning. And the smaller rock that you see, everything from still these size pieces on down to the finest material, this was all donated by PennDOT and their contractor, Hanson Resources Incorporated. They spent several years replacing a bridge down in Hopewell, which is about 15 miles away. And they had to truck in approximately 4,000 cubic yards of this material called riprap to build causeways for their machines to operate on as they were tearing down and constructing the new bridge. And they wanted a place to get rid of it. So we said, hey, we'll take it. So I paid an operator to send trucks down there for about 10 or 12 days and just haul that material out. So it's about 10,000 tons, about 4,000 cubic yards as best we know. And the intent of that is to basically seal the entrances to a lot of these voids against animals larger than a woodrat, especially raccoons. We want to keep predators out and keep raccoons out to prevent roundworm from contaminating the core of this site. Now, we know woodrats are preyed on by snakes like rattlers and black rat snakes and weasels, neither of which we could exclude because they're the same size or smaller than woodrats, but we're still protecting them from things like raccoons and bobcats and foxes and coyotes and all those animals that are larger than woodrats. So our hope is that this site is constructed well enough that they will find it attractive, but also because it's in such close proximity to where we know we have woodrats living, that this will create another territory for a female.
What determines rock quality? Like, what makes it poor or favorable?
Yeah, that's a really good question, which I should have covered back at the outcrop. So, not all boulder fields or scree slopes are suitable woodrat habitat. They need deep spaces. They serve a couple of purposes, and maybe is a good time for you to try to put your thinking caps on and tell me why you think deep spaces are good for woodrats. I've already talked about one.
Well, obviously for the females, for burrowing and
To
like
avoid
and
predators,
avoiding.
right? And the other one is, it's a little more subtle, maybe. No.
Is it to block out larger ones, like you said?
No, that's the predator thing, but temperature regulation. So in summer, you can imagine, especially in really exposed boulder fields, they get very hot. But the deeper you go underground, the cooler it's going to be. And conversely, in winter, those deeper spaces are going to stay warmer.